Welcome to this edition of the MDM Podcast. I'm Tom Gale. Today, I'd like to share with you a conversation I had with John Nantz, principal of Redwood Advisors, on the research he's leading for MDM on how distribution go-to-market models are changing, and fast. You'll hear John outline the 5 imperatives he's distilled from what he's learned on how high-performing distributors are making changes to their selling processes and teams to better engage and retain customers. And here's the deeper reason why I'm sharing this and suggest you seriously consider joining us in Denver May 13th to 15th at our 2025 Shift Conference, where John's keynoting his findings. There's a lot of hyperbole and noise as we move into the second quarter of 2025. In some ways, it feels to me as disruptive as the second quarter of 2020, with some significant differences. 5 years ago, distribution channels were shocked, along with every other part of society, and proved to be resilient and critically important to help the economy back on its feet quickly. The fastest and largest economic rebound ever, and I think distributors can take the lion's share of credit for that. Today, the industry is still going through the major industry shifts in play over the past 10 years, which the pandemic accelerated. You know the laundry list. Digital transformation kickstarted by Amazon Business. Entry of non-traditional sellers with very different cost structures and value propositions for your customers. Consolidation. An ongoing workforce transition, and the increasing sophistication of the competitive landscape that data analytics, machine learning, and AI especially are turbocharging and rewriting the rules for what it takes to compete. Here's how I think the disruption of 2025 is critically different and offers opportunity for distributors, for those ready to act quickly. This time, the disruption's laser-focused on political, government, and key for distributors, the core economic and market foundations that historically frame markets and go-to-market models. Nobody knows what the new rules are going to be, and that's your opportunity. How you meet and leverage these big industry challenges and shifts is what the Shift Conference Series is all about. It's the only venue where you and your team can benchmark real-time in Q2 2025 what and how you're doing across these core transformational dimensions. John outlines the 5 imperatives he's distilled from his surveys and many conversations with distribution commercial leaders to help you think about what you're doing right today and how you can move your team forward faster. Join us at the Shift Conference May 13th to 15th. It's the only event designed for immediate strategic and commercial impact in one of the most uncertain economic environments and fastest changing marketplaces. Go to mdm.com/shift2025 to view the agenda and learn more. I hope you enjoy our conversation. John, welcome to the MDM Podcast.
Tom, it's great to be here. Good to see you again, and excited to be on this podcast with you.
Give us a little bit of an overview of Redwood Advisors and your history in the industry.
Well, it's been great working with you on this and the previous work that we've done on sales transformation work and identifying top customers. And our firm, we focus on distribution. It's one of our top industries where we spend a lot of time. I'm a former McKinsey guy, and so we do a lot of sales and marketing transformation work for distributors who are saying, hey, I want to kind of right size, redesign, and optimize how we go to market as a distribution company. We do strategic planning work. So we've done a number of MDM and NAW members' strategic plans. And then we'll kind of do other kind of more strategically inclined, we get calls about, hey, can I get a market study? Can I get help with an organizational redesign? Can I get help with a merger and acquisition, an integration that might be really complicated, that can help distributors get these really complex things and strategic things done.
We're talking about this in the context of hybrid sales, but that can mean a lot of different things. What are some of the common denominators? And in your findings, what are you really seeing that's coming out that is marking those who are outperforming or who you see are really successful in meeting some of those challenges and in trying to prepare their go-to-market model for the future?
So we've got those 5 imperatives. And one thing that's really struck us as we've been doing these interviews and doing the research for this report is I do think that the industry context really matters. So let me start with that, and then we can talk about what are we learning, how are people responding to these industry conditions. We have a number of forces at play that I think bear some consideration, right? So one is you've got Amazon Business. People thought, oh, it's going to change everything, and it hasn't actually been as impactful. But I do think in general, this introduction of some really big players that are distributors or e-commerce players that do distribution, right? So you've got these really big players that are coming into the space or certain components of the space. That's a big industry shift. I'd say more consolidation than we used to have 10 or 20 years ago. You've got private equity moving into the space. You have some family-owned distributors that are just getting more aggressive. And in general, what you're seeing is a more consolidated industry in general, right? There are exceptions to this, but we're seeing in general more consolidation. We're seeing demographic changes. A lot of people in distribution is actually an older industry on some measures than the average industry. And that means a lot of the people who are working in it today may not be working in it in 10 years. And so I've had people tell me that they think up to 50% of workers are going to turn over the next decade. And you're going to go from the average age is 50, a little over 50s. And we're going to start pulling in younger people who are different in terms of technology, different in terms of their quality of life expectations, et cetera. So we've got a workforce transition. And then we have a technology transformation occurring with legitimately helpful tools coming in and being used across the enterprise in ways that I would say are pretty compelling, very highly value add, make your life better types of tools. So this is the context we're in. So as a lot is shifting, a lot is moving, technology is coming in, a little more tech savviness is coming in, consolidation is coming in. And so for the average distributor, I think a lot of this begs the question of, okay, how do I compete and win in this new context? What we heard in a lot of interviews, I think what our belief is that sort of the basic distribution, like if you think about distributor as a distribution company, meaning I'm going to take product A and I'm going to move it from point X to point Z. That's what I do. I move stuff around. That is getting more commoditized. That is getting more pressured. If that's literally all you're doing is getting someone adhesives, getting someone blades, getting someone a simpler piece of capital equipment, if I can tell you, hey, here's the part number, here's what I need, I know what the manufacturer number is, that is not a source of competitive advantage in the future. It's certainly not going to be in 5 or 10 years. So let me talk about the 5 big imperatives that we're learning so far, and then we can go back through some of these. Number 1, optimizing your sales force. I think it's becoming an imperative because we spend so much money on our go-to-market, right? Like you look at a distributor and it's like, well, I buy a bunch of stuff. Well, so does everybody else. So you're not differentiating on that. Where can you add value? Your go-to-market is where most distributors spend most of their money. So you got to optimize that because that's where you're spending your money, right? And that's where you decide how to differentiate. So you got to optimize that. Second, driving deeper customer integrations. We're thinking about VMI. We're thinking about ERP. We're thinking about, is there sales and marketing co-planning you can do? Again, Amazon's not going to do that. It doesn't want to worry about those things. It doesn't want to do the customizations, at least at this scale. And that differentiates you because it's like, well, I can't, a blade is not a blade is not a blade because your blade is right over there. And your blade, when I buy it, it's in my ERPs integrated. So I'm tracking it, right? And you're the one to help me. You're giving me advice on when I should upgrade my blades. That's not Amazon, right? That's not even larger competitors. So those deep customer integrations obviously helps you differentiate to win, helps you differentiate in terms of retention. Third imperative, building out core value add services. I think this is so important. It obviously depends on the industry. Some distribution industries are more opportunity here. There might be a bit more in industrials. There might be a bit more in HVAC than might be like food. There's obviously variation, but regardless, what are those value add services that you can do? Kitting, light assembly, installation, QA, training, design. We have all these amazing examples that we've learned from our interviews about how people are like, again, really solving their customers' problems in a way that's very, very value add. So that's the third imperative. Fourth one, becoming a true custom solution provider. Now, the difference here is a value-add service. We want to tease this distinction out. Value-add service is the customer knows what they want. They just don't want to do it. So example is, I want to install the machine. I just don't want to do it. I want to QA this. I just don't want to do it, right? So it's a service that they're pulling from you. The custom solution provider is, I don't even know what I need. I need you to come in and help me literally co-design this. I need you to co-design a system. I need you to co-design a package. I need you to co-design a part. Now, you start talking about differentiation. If you're literally solving the problem for the customer, they don't even know how to solve it. They're asking for your help. You have a really strong lock-in. Amazon is never going to do that. They do not want to get into that business. And so you are safe there, and you can charge a very high margin for the service, and then you can charge a very high margin for the products that follow through later because you are highly differentiated, custom solution provider. And then the fifth thing is adopting these key next generation technologies. Everybody talks about technology. Everyone, when we talk about technology for 40, 50 years, I get that. This is not BS. We have spent time with CEOs, tech, operations, sales executives. We have also talked to the CEOs of a lot of these technology companies as part of this report. So I have gotten demos myself. I have talked to the CEO. And what I can tell you is some of these things are magical. So that's kind of the picture those are the imperatives that we're thinking. When you look across these, like you go back 10 or 20 years and people were doing VMI, they were doing some of these things. But as we talked to a lot of our interviews that we conducted, this is the future that companies are moving into. And I had multiple CEOs tell me, hey, look, he's like, we may not get there, but I'm shooting. Can 50% of our margin come from these non-distribution services? Mm-hmm. That's where we're trying to go. He's like, we used to be 0. Right now we're at 15. And he's like, I want us to get to 50. Now notice, I didn't say revenue. I said margin. That's a big difference. My revenue might be 90% distribution. That's what I'm still doing a lot of stuff, but I'm not making my margin. I might make 3 or 6 or 10 or 12 or 15% on my actual products, depending on the industry and the size. But let's call it 6%, right, as a rough average. I might be getting 30% or 40% or 50% margin on my value-add services. And my value-add services are what's differentiating me. Like me selling them the widget is not differentiating me, but me designing the solution, setting up a light assembly solution for them, helping them do training and installation of capital equipment, and then doing it as an integrated solution for them. Incredibly high value from the customer's perspective. So that's kind of what we're seeing. And we're really seeing distributors almost moving from being distributors to really being solution providers. How do we enable our customers to do the non-value added work so that they can focus on their core competency?
Were there any ahas around a couple of your interviewees think about this and approach this?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of ahas. I said a lot there. Probably the biggest aha is when you start going down the path of driving deeper integrations, doing value-add services, becoming a true custom solution provider. And we in the report are going to make distinctions between what we mean by that. A customer integration, for example, is typically not something you would charge for. You're not going to charge for an ERP integration, typically. Now, it makes you a lot stickier, so it's something you should do. You might be able to charge more for your products, but you're not going to charge for the thing itself. Versus a value-add service, if you do training and Q&A and light assembly, you're going to charge for that, right? Yeah. So the difference there is, are you charging for it? And the custom solution provider is are you actually designing a custom solution for this customer versus having them ask for a service that you sort of offer as a generic offering. And that's kind of there's a distinction between each of the three. One of my big, I guess, rallying cries for this presentation at Shift is going to be, you got to put that hat on. Like, I almost think sometimes like the fact that we call ourselves distributors can sort of lull people into, oh, all I do is like get people stuff. And it's like, I don't think that's really, yes, that's true. That is a big part of what you do. I don't know if that's how you're going to win moving forward. I think the way you're going to win is being a problem solver, being a solution provider. Now, part of that is getting people the stuff they need. But then there's all these other things you can do to create a ton of value using the stuff, but adding to it. So I think one learning that we had is, start where you are and just try to keep going down that path. You're not going to jump to custom solution provider. If you don't offer a single value add service, then you're not going to start doing custom solutions typically. So one thing we heard from CEOs is they were like, look, I started with this and then we did some learning. I'll give you an example. So like one packaging company that we spoke with was like, oh, like we were doing customer interviews and we were sort of learning, hey, like there were different types of boxes that people wanted. And we were figured out, okay, we got to change our SKU lines. We got to go back to the manufacturers. And then at some point they were having conversation and the guy was like, I don't even know what packaging I need. And the CEO had this huge aha. He's like, oh, wow, we could do that. So he's built out a team of packaging engineers to go work with customers to actually design the package to be efficient and all the other things. And that's, you talk about a huge game change, because now he's not selling them a box and putting stuff in it. He's helping them solve like, well, how much space are you using in your warehouse? And, you know, how much room do you actually need? And he's actually helping them reduce their costs in other parts of the business. So he has a whole team now that does that. And that's hugely sticky, because if you give someone a custom box, well, if they don't want, if you're like, they think your price is too high, well, what are they going to do? Go get the custom box from Amazon? Amazon doesn't sell that box. So he solved all these problems, right? But it started with he didn't start there. He started somewhere much simpler. What I'd encourage people to do is say, look, you are where you are, and then start to ask, like, what could we do more of? And I think one thing distributors aren't always great at, and this is where I think folks like ourselves can be helpful, is knowing, hey, where are those opportunities for us to create value? You know, do you have someone in your company that's talking to your sales team, talking to your customers, talking to your operations team to identify, okay, here's some things we could do that would be a value-add service or custom solution, et cetera. Like, have you done a good diagnostic of identifying, here are our biggest opportunities? So I think that's another thing people can do, is to start where you are, put on that hat of, I'm a solution provider, I'm not just a distributor, and then do something I think most distributors have opportunities here. They just don't know what they are. The customer's not going to tell you what they need, right? Like, you got to go talk to your customers, talk to your salespeople, and then kind of put all that together to say, hey guys, I think we could do training. I think we could do light assembly versus kitting. I think we could actually do more. I think we could do more VMI, whatever it is. So approaching this stuff intentionally and strategically, as opposed to kind of just waiting for it to happen to you. You can do that. It just takes a lot longer.
And that's our whole focus at Shift, is really to bring those stories in. And also importantly, it's absolutely, your focus is going to be on the sales process there and how distributors are changing their go-to-market models. But this is very integrated with how people are thinking about their digital capabilities, about their technology, about how they leverage data analytics. And also it comes down a lot to the kind of talent and team that they have in place. And that's the other thing I want to touch on with you here is talk a little bit about some of your findings as you've been doing the research.
The change management is really hard. The change management's most important for the first and the fifth one, in terms of like optimizing your sales force and then adopting these next generation technologies. I think some best practices are, one is just, hey, can you pilot something first? You know, everyone's like, hey, this is a new idea. I don't know if I trust it. I don't know if it's going to work. It's like, is there a way to pilot it? Can you pilot it in a region or a state, or can you pilot with a specific team or a specific set of customers? And then the other thing is taking your time. So everything doesn't have to get done in 1 week. And then probably the third thing is really understanding the incentives of the different stakeholders involved and figuring out how do you motivate them to make this successful. So I will give you an example to make that really concrete. So we talked to a company that rolled out a pricing tool optimization, and the sales team, as many sales teams do, did not like it at the beginning, because they were like, I don't like this. You don't know my customer. You don't know what they're willing to pay. You don't know what competitors are bidding. This is stupid, or this is not going to work. And they said, we hear you, but we're still going to do it, right? Because we need consistency in our pricing, and we think we can get higher margin, which they did. They got a 50% increase in their margin, which is massive. Now, the sales people could still override it. The first thing they did, step one, is they just said, okay, the pricing tool is just going to give you a recommendation. You can still pick whatever price you want. So the first part of the deployment was, we're not telling you to do anything, but we're going to tell you what we think you should charge. And we're going to track what percentage of the time you don't do it by person. But you have complete freedom. So that was really smart. That was step one. So we're not controlling, but we're providing, we're enabling. And then they looked across it and they let that go for like 3 months. And then they looked at their best performers. And they said, okay, what are those guys doing? And what they found is they're like, all right, those guys are adjusting some prices, but they're not doing it that often. And so what they learned is they're like, okay, the best practice here is that you adjust 15% or less of the time. And so they went back to their sales team and they said, we've got some data. We know how much you guys override. We've looked at our best performing sales guys and they're overriding 15% of the time. So we're going to let you guys do it 15% of the time. You can actually do it more, but we're going to dock your commission. So if you really think you've got this figured out, we're giving you that freedom, but you are going to pay for it. And you got to make it up on the back end by selling more stuff. So they gave them the freedom, but then they gave them the incentive based on the data. And then over time, the sales team got super on board with it, right? And then because they had the sales tool, they were able to start compensating more based on margin versus on top line because they had a better sense of how much money they were making. So they were really able to dial the system in. And they did this over like a year. So I think that's a good example of just, how do you approach these things in a thoughtful way? And, like I said, piloting, not forcing people to do it and then trying to align incentives, right? So that like, hey, this is going to help you, not hurt you.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, John. I'm very excited to join you in May to hear the final outcome of the rest of the research piece that you're doing here over the next 2 months. So thanks for taking the time today. We'll see you shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the MDM Podcast, which was brought to you by our 2025 Shift Conference set for May 13th through the 15th in Denver. You can find all the event details at mdm.com/shift, and we would love to see you there in May. And you can find all of our past podcast episodes at mdm.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.